On April 1st, 2024, I officially started learning Japanese, or at least that's the date I choose to mark the beginning. In reality, I had already experimented with Anki a few days earlier and had started learning hiragana and katakana almost 2 to 4 weeks before that, and to be honest, I had even tried learning Japanese a few years ago. But for the sake of simplicity and because it's an easier to remember date, let's just say my official start was April 1st, right? Okay, perfect. So, I've already talked a bit about my beginnings in this previous video here, but here I want to give a brief recap of my first year of studying Japanese and how far I've come. Since I had finished school and was doing an apprenticeship, I enjoyed the freedom of not having homework or anything else to study after work. However, since it had always been a dream of mine to spend an extended period in Japan, and given that I had already attempted to learn Japanese once before, I decided to dedicate myself to daily study for an indefinite period. I figured it would take at least 5 years of active learning to reach a decent level of fluency. There was never any doubt in my mind that I wanted to start learning again, but what really pushed me was stumbling across a video made by Lukrembo. His content inspired me so much that I decided to start learning Japanese again in March 2024. He also motivated me to get back into VTubing. His videos are fantastic, so be sure to check out his channel. I've linked it in the description, and I've already mentioned him like in every of my other videos, so yeah, definitely check him out, okay? So I began learning hiragana and katakana again. Since I still remembered most of hiragana from my first attempt, it only took me a few days to not only learn how to read, but also write the characters. Katakana, on the other hand, was much harder. I had retained far less of it. I partially relearned the characters using Duolingo, but mostly I wrote them out by hand until I could write them flawlessly. After that, I practiced all 90 commonly used kana characters daily to reinforce them. Over time, I gradually increased the intervals, first every 2 days, then twice a week, and now just once a week to ensure I don't forget them. Reading and writing are two very different skills. It's easy to recognize characters when reading, but I don't believe you can truly learn to write them without active practicing. This becomes even more apparent with kanji, which are much more complex than most kana. Since I never practiced writing kanji, I can only write a few simple ones, like ichi 1, ni 2, san 3, or hito person. While I do think writing kanji could help with memorization, my goal was never to write Japanese per hand, and I don't see much need for it in my daily life. However, I do hope that this won't be a problem when I study at a Japanese school during my exchange year. I'd rather not have to catch up on handwriting practice, as I don't think it would be a good use of my time actually.
I hope all of you have already learned kanji. Let's take a handwritten placement test right away.
After mastering kana and doing a short test run, I started using Anki with the core TK6K deck. Lukrembo used the same deck to learn Japanese. It's basically a collection of 6,000 commonly used words that often appear in daily life. It's a great way to start building vocabulary, but apparently not all of these words are used in daily life or are used that common. I've already encountered a few of them which are kinda special, I guess. But what is Anki? Anki is a flashcard program designed for efficient learning. You can create your own flashcards or download pre-made decks. The more often you answer a card correctly, the longer the interval before it reappears. Currently my maximum interval is set to 1 year. I can hardly believe it's been so long since I learned my first Anki card. By the way, it was itchy, meaning 1. Of course, I already knew that one and many other words before starting. That's why my initial goal of learning 10 new words per day wasn't too difficult at first. But after just 2 weeks, I'd already learned 140 words, including many I hadn't encountered before. Within a few weeks, I was already spending over 40 minutes a day on Anki. Back then, I also took much longer to review each card, partly because I had fewer daily reviews, but also because I spent more time reading example sentences than I do now. I continued studying every day until my review count and study time stabilized. Over the past year, I spent about 15 minutes per day on the Core to K6 deck, averaging 265 reviews per day, including the decks I created myself. My total study time was around 54 minutes per day with an average of 276 reviews. I'll talk more about my self-made decks later. Around the same time I started using Duolingo, not just for color practice but also for output exercise later on. For the first 2 months or so I practiced 3 hiragana and 3 katakana lessons on Duolingo every day. Once I had completed all the kana lessons, I actually started the real Japanese course. In the beginning I did about 4 lessons per day, but after the course was updated and most units were expanded to 6 lessons per unit instead of 4, I increased my daily goal to 6. At first the lessons were quick and easy to complete. However, as the sentences became longer and more complex, and since I usually do Duolingo in work breaks or other unproductive moments where I don't focus too much, I need about 30 minutes per day, sometimes only like 15, sometimes near to like 1 hour. Yeah, so has Duolingo been worth so far? I'm not so sure. Would I choose it over Anki? Definitely not. The main reason I continued using Duolingo after finishing the kanji lesson was that I wanted some form of output practice. Plus I could fit the lessons into time I would be using productively anyway. If that weren't the case, I probably would have stopped a long time ago. Unfortunately, Duolingo is far from perfect. I won't go too much into detail in this video, since this video is not about Duolingo itself, but if you're interested in a more in-depth review, I recommend checking out the video by, of course, Livakiwi. I'll also link it in the description if I don't forget it. The biggest drawback, in my opinion, is the lack of grammatical explanations. You do learn that "tabemas" means to eat, for example, but the underlying grammar is never explained. Tabemas is not the base form of the verb, it's the mas form, which is the simplest polite form in Japanese. Later, you will come across tabenai, which means not to eat. So you might assume that replacing mas with nai negates a verb, right? Yes and no. Take the word nomu, for example. The polite form is nomimas, but in the negative it becomes nomanai. Why does the mi suddenly change to ma? Nowhere in Duolingo is verb conjugation properly explained. That leaves you with 3 options: research it yourself, try to recognize patterns, or memorize every verb form of every verb individually, which gets pretty fast. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend the last one actually. Another issue is that translation exercises often feel more like a research game rather than an actual learning experience. You spend more time finding the right words than actively learning the language. There are plenty of other drawbacks, but I don't want to dwell on this too much. This video is already going to be quite long. I've now completed around 70 sections on Duolingo, in addition to the canon lessons of course. So that means I'm almost done with the course, right? Unfortunately not. Just chapter 3 alone will probably take me another full year, and I'll need at least another year to finish the rest of the course, assuming it doesn't get expanded, which I think it will actually. That means I'll need at least 2 more years to complete the entire Duolingo Japanese course. I would like to finish it, but the better my Japanese gets, the more Duolingo feels like a waste of time. For now, as long as I can fit Duolingo into my daily routine without losing too much productive time, I'm gonna keep going. But beyond that, who knows? Not long after starting Duolingo, I also began reading the Alchemist's Guide to Learning Japanese. At first, everything made perfect sense and was easy to understand, since I already know many of the early grammar rules from previous learning. However, once I reached the more difficult chapters, my motivation quickly dropped. The concepts felt quite abstract, especially since my native language is German and I'm kind of fluent in English, but both languages are really different from Japanese. After a long break, I decided to give it another shot. I'd realized that the grammar that Alchem covers is essential for understanding Japanese sentence structure. To help me retain the concepts, I created 2 Anki decks, one for general grammar rules, one specifically for verb conjugation, which is a crucial but complex part of Japanese and something Duolingo doesn't teach you. Since I hadn't set a concrete goal, like how many chapters I wanted to complete per week, I became inconsistent and made little progress. One day I reviewed the chapters again and decided I wanted to finish the entire guide before my trip to Japan. But at that point I'd already lost a lot of time, so to catch up I needed to complete at least 2 chapters per week, and so I began working through them systematically. Okay guys, you won't believe what just happened to me. Like, I recorded the part of the video up until this part in one session, then I paused the recording because I wanted to drink something, and then I continued recording, was reading the other stuff, but the problem was I didn't hit the record button. So yeah, I wasted 15 minutes. I read basically, I don't know, a few pages of my script without even recording. Oh god. But yeah, okay, let's continue. In addition to my Anki decks, I created a text document where I copied and summarized the most important points from each chapter. This made it easier to review chapters and helped me remember key concepts. Starting in November-December, I committed to studying 2 chapters per week, one on Saturday and one on Wednesday. Some chapters were fairly easy, while others were real challenges requiring summaries that were 3 to 4 pages long. As of this video, my summary document has already grown to 61 pages. It took me quite a while to develop an efficient strategy, and I had to adjust my approach multiple times, but I think I finally found a good workflow. Now, in addition to learning 2 new chapters per week, I review 2 pages of my summary daily and repeat newly learned chapters every 2 days for a week to reinforce them. At some point I also created a 3rd Anki deck. This one focused on numbers and counters. Counting in Japanese is an art in itself. For example, round objects are counted differently than flat objects or people. There are over 10 commonly used counters in daily life, and for each one you need to memorize when to use it, the numbers 1 to 10, which often have irregular forms, and various exceptions. Since I have now already finished Darkham's complete guide, I moved on to the grammar guide. The grammar guide covers mostly the same topics as the complete guide, but explains them in great detail. Because of that, I've been reading almost one chapter per day lately, since most of the content isn't entirely new and I don't have to add too much to my notes. My goal is to finish it by the end of June. After that, I plan on to focus on reviewing my notes daily, reading 2 to 3 pages per day to reinforce what I've already learned. From that point on, I also want to shift my focus to other aspects of Japanese, things I'll discuss later in the video. Since my current job contract ends at the last of June, I should have plenty of time to properly prepare for Japan, at least that's the plan. Now I want to talk a bit about Anki and the Core Took a 6K deck and my experiences with it. For about 80 days I learned 10 new words per day. However, after a while the number of daily reviews became overwhelming. At one point I had over 400 reviews per day. To manage this, I reduced the number of new cards to 8 per day. I was honestly really surprised by how quickly my workload dropped. After another month or so, I lowered it further to 6 cards per day, though I briefly increased it back to 7 at one point, but not for too long. Now I've been learning 6 new cards per day for over half a year, though I've made adjustments along the way. After 115 days, I reached my first 1000 words, and after another like 175 to 180 days, I hit the 2000 word mark. Looking at these numbers, it's clear that reducing my daily new cards from 10 to 6 significantly slowed my progress, but it was necessary to avoid getting stuck. Of course, I also faced setbacks and some challenges along the way that slowed me down. One major issue was during the e-cannonball event, which I, by the way, also made a video about it. At that time, I was constantly on the move, busy and exhausted. On top of that, Anki kept throwing difficult words at me, words I just couldn't seem to remember. As a result, my daily reviews skyrocketed to 580 cards per day, compared to my usual 250 per day, and this happened for 2 days in a row. So I needed a solution really fast. For the first and only time, I used Anki's heart button to skip the last 20 to 30 words I couldn't recall, just so I could finally go to sleep. I was frustrated and I put a bit of a negative spin on the entire event. Every morning I felt demotivated just thinking about Anki. I don't remember exactly, but I think I spent over 2 hours on Anki each of those days. That's why on day 2 or maybe even day 1 I decided to pause new cards entirely. Luckily, on the 3rd day my reviews already dropped to 460. Within a week I managed to bring them down to 200, and then I resumed my 6 new cards per day. I lost almost a week of progress, but that's still better than getting stuck and making Anki unmanageable. For a long time things went smoothly, but then at the end of November my reviews started increasing again. Just as I considered pausing new cards again, I discovered a new feature in Anki, one that apparently had been available for months: FSRS. To put it simply, FSRS is an improved scheduling algorithm that predicts how well you'll remember each card over time. You can set a desired retention rate, for example 85%, and FSRS will optimize intervals to match the target. The goal is to reduce reviews while maintaining or even improving learning efficiency. It sounded great in theory, but I was worried about messing up my existent intervals. After some consideration, I decided to give it a shot. At first, I was really disappointed. I set my retention rate to 85%, which is often recommended, but my reviews actually increased. To deal with this, I paused new cards again and instead focused on completing my numbers and counter stack. I also lowered my retention rate to 80 at this point. After some time, my reviews finally started decreasing, but much slower than the last time I had paused new cards before. Eventually though, everything stabilized and I became a big fan of FSRS. The cards I have to review are now a bit higher than before, but I can review them much faster because I remember the cards better. The number of wrong answers dropped from like 40 to 50%, not just 20 to 30%. After a few weeks, my daily reviews settled at around 200, and most days I only spend 40 to 45 minutes on Anki, and I'm still learning 6 new words per day. So now let's speak a bit about my future goals and how I want to continue doing my Anki reviews. Recently, I have considered increasing my new cards to 7 per day, but instead I decided to first try raising my retention rate back to 85%. That was a few weeks ago. Since then, my daily reviews have increased slightly, the time I spend on Anki has gone up, but my accuracy has also improved further. So at this point, I spend a bit less than 1 hour on most days, so I think there could be a good sweet spot in the future, but yeah, I think it's a bit early to get the conclusion out of that. I also noticed that my young cards, so the cards with a short interval, have been steadily increasing. However, the growth curve is flattening, so I believe it will stabilize soon and even drop in the future. Because of that, I'm keeping my retention rate at 85% for now. I'll probably give another update on this in my 2 year of Japanese learning video or any similar video like this. As you can see in the graph here, after switching to FSRS, my workload became much more stable and spikes in review count became much less frequent. At this point, I've completed almost 40% of the core 2K6K deck, but I'll still need about 600 more days to finish the rest. And even then, my learning won't be over, not by a long shot, but I'm okay with that actually. I just stick to my routine, focus on the process and don't worry too much about my end goal. So now, before I attempt the JLTP N4 sample test, I want to briefly talk about how I plan to study moving forward. Most of what I'm going to say I've already mentioned earlier. I'm continuing Duolingo and Anki as before. I'm almost done with Daikim's guide, and once I finish it, I'll just review the key points and my notes daily instead of actively studying it. This will free up some time, which I plan to dedicate to immersion. So far, I've already been doing some immersion practice, occasionally listening to the Nihongo Kontepe podcast, as well as watching easier anime with Japanese subtitles, using the anime difficulty list on jptp.io. That website is highly recommended since it allows you to sort anime and novels by difficulty and helping you find content suited for your current level. Some of the anime I've watched up until this point are Kanojo to Kanojo no Neko, which is called She and Her Cat in English. It's a short but heartbreaking film, but it's really beautiful, I highly recommend it. Robots Down Sagami 2028 and Karakai Chosu no Takagi-san. It seems the difficulty rankings on jptp.io have changed or have been reworked since the last time I checked, but I'm pretty sure it's still a great resource, probably even better than before. Another site I can recommend is Animelon, where I can watch anime with Japanese subtitles for free. Once I finish Daikim's guide, I want to shift my focus towards immersion and output. I especially want to improve in these areas because they will greatly help me to prepare better for my time in Japan. I think this video is already long enough, so let's jump into the JLTP N4 sample test and see if I can pass. The JLTP Japanese Language Proficiency Test has 5 levels. N5, which is the easiest, to N1, the hardest. I attempted N5 after about 200 days and 350 hours of studying and passed with I think over 75%. Yeah, right now I've logged approximately 325 hours in Anki, probably another 325 hours with Duolingo, Daikim and immersion. So in total I think around 650 hours. According to different sources, you're expected to have around 790 hours of studying for N4, knowledge of 1500 words and familiarity with 150 kanji. I've already met the last 2 requirements since a pretty long time, and since I passed N5 with just 350 hours instead of 460, I feel pretty confident. And if I'm completely going to fail, I just added this part out of the video, which is an easy fix to be honest. But yeah, for the official JLPT N4 exam, you need about 50% to pass, as far as I know at least. But since this practice test is probably shorter and structured a bit different than the real one, I'm aiming for at least 70% like the last time. Not sure if that's doable, but I'll give it my best shot. So yeah, let's go, let's do it, and let's see if I can finish the test and if I can pass it, so yeah. Okay then, let's start with the JLTP sample test. Let's go, let's try it out, the N4 test. Okay, so then let's start the timer. It should work, right? Yeah, it works, perfect. So, let's see what it says. Watate, wataru. Wataru is means cross. I'm pretty sure it's wataru. Watate. What? Coyote. I don't really know why, but let's continue. Oh, yeah, but I don't have to know what it means. This one. Yeah. Supate moratta. I think it's recito. Like receipt. Right? Yeah. Sugie. I think it's Oshiete. I think it's like teach tell. Like tell me the number. Okay, yeah. Like the problem with the first sentence, I know Toshokan, but since it's not written in kanji, I don't really know what it means. So basically, I have to choose the sentence where chusho is like in the right context. The problem is, I don't recognize chusho, I don't know what it means, I probably haven't learned that word, and it's not written in kanji. If it would be written in kanji, it would be much easier, because I could like, maybe it's written with the kanji note and it would be much easier to like figure out the context or the meaning, but like this it's really difficult to be honest. Yeah, let's just go with the second one, but I don't know. I think it's not the first one, maybe not the third one, like 2 or 4 I think. Okay, no, it was 3 apparently. But what's chusho? Wait, I want to like find it out. What's chusho? Address. Okay, next one. Wait, that's... Oh wait! That's like the... how is this a form in English called? Like when something is ongoing, present, perfect? No. It has fallen down and it's still like fallen down, right? Like it could be this one. Okay, yeah. Okay, next one. I think I'm going for Utamo, but I'm totally not sure about that. Okay, now. Oh no! Reading! Actually, it isn't even that difficult. The text is kinda simple because, like, basically it's something I learned because of Duolingo, I think. So actually, I really have to thank Duolingo for that. And I just have to choose the right particle. I think it's wahr. Yeah. How much is the coffee apparently? Oh, I think now I understand it. Basically, when if I if this guy orders the coffee and the internet, it's like 200 yen for delivery. But if he orders 500 gram, it's tata ni narimasu. Basically, I think that means it gets free. And if he orders 500 gram, it gets 200 yen cheaper. So I think that's all we need for the exercise down there. Okay, so let's read the question once more. 400 multiplied by 5 is 2000 yen. The delivery is free and he gets 200 yen cheaper. So it's 1800. Oh god, that was nice. That was nice actually. Huh. It's really difficult. Basically at first he gave like presents to the other people, but then he was always worried about if they like it or not. Then he started writing letters, and at the end most didn't like reply or something like that. I think he like brought the like welcome letters by himself. No! It's the first one? Let's go. Okay. He has a lot of beer bottles. He wants to throw them away as fast as quickly. Which day can he throw it away and at which place? So we have to look at this section here, like with the beer bottle, at place C at every week's Friday. So it's place C at every week's Friday, yeah. And now to the listening. Oh no, I don't want to. And I'm also wondering what happens if like the time reaches 1 hour. I'm not sure if it can like show 1 hour, to be honest. Okay. But was that maybe?
バスを降りてから少し歩きます。
I don't know. I don't want to listen again. I'm going with 1. But it's probably not 1. Yeah, okay, it was 4. I think it's 3. Yeah. But it's really intense. Like doing these things that's so intense.
仕事が終わって帰ります。何と言いますか?
Okay, I think he's returning back to work. What does he say?
1、
お邪魔します。
2、
お大事に。
3、
お先に失礼します。
I think it's 1. Okay, it was 3. Osaki ni shitsureshimasu. One more. I think it isn't that good. I made some mistakes, but if this one is right, I think it should be good. I think oishiso is weird. I think oishiso is something you won't use. I think it's 1. It's kohi. Yeah, it definitely wasn't as good as the ones like the last test, the N5 test. But let's see. Let's do some calculations. Let's now talk about the results and take another look at the questions I got wrong. I got quite a few mistakes, 6 in total, which is twice as many as last time, and I only scored 60%, which is well below my target, so I was initially a bit disappointed. However, after a few days and with a clearer head, I don't think the result is actually that bad. I felt much more confident, especially when reading the longer passages. For example, in the one involving a math problem or the one about the garbage schedule, I was able to understand pretty much the entire text and grasp the main idea without much trouble. Also, for the questions I got right, I felt genuinely confident in my answers, whereas last time I was often guessing and just got lucky. So no, it's not a great result, but I can clearly see how much my Japanese has improved since the last test. Let's now go over the wrong answers. Question number 1. At first, I thought I didn't know the word coyote, but after searching my Anki deck, I realized that I actually do know it. It means something like to go to a place frequently. It makes perfect sense now in the context. That said, I haven't had that reading of the kanji in my mind at all, so the mistake is understandable. In hindsight though, the meaning is totally clear now. Question 5. My mistake here was not recognizing the word chusho, which means address. If it had been written in kanji instead of hiragana, I probably would have recognized it and answered correctly. Question number 7. The main issue here was that I didn't recognize the word hikerushi, and although I understand the sentence now, the sentence structure still feels pretty unnatural and unfamiliar to me. So honestly, even if I had tried harder, I probably wouldn't have gotten it right. Question 10. Even though I understand the text in general, I found it confusing, since it switched topics midway and talking about one thing and then suddenly about something else. I think with more reading practice I might have figured it out, but at the moment all I could really do was guess. This is where my lack of listening practice really showed. I believe I knew most of the vocabulary, but I clearly still have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to listening comprehension. If these had been reading questions instead of listening, I probably would have gotten them right. After reflecting on my learning methods from the past year and testing my current knowledge, I can honestly say I'm really happy with my progress. Even though I still want to learn as much as possible before my trip to Japan, especially when it comes to listening and speaking. I've made some massive improvements. I hope you'll continue to join me on my journey of learning Japanese and also on my actual journey to Japan, where I plan to make some videos. Feel free to check out my next videos or join me on Twitch for future streams. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and drop a comment. So then, matane and see ya! Bye bye!